It is Monday, November 9th, 2020. It is 8 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, and so you know what time it is. It's time for a little bit of coin metal. And it was a glorious get your ass kicked at Jiu-Jitsu Monday. Very, very much so. Glorious. I did not actually get my ass kicked, nor did I kick anybody else's ass. I did not roll today because there was competition class afterward. But beyond that, I actually took last week off. And for those of you who are aware, I had a minor little staph infection that I'm pretty sure I picked up from rolling. But I did what I had to do as far as resolving that issue. And I feel I'm on the mend. The swelling went pretty much all away. I mean, I got like just a teeny tiny little bitty bump left over, but for the most part, I think I'm done with it. You know, I think I managed to get on through it. I'm not having the same pressure on my chest, and I'm not experiencing there's like this amotivational syndrome. I mean, it's like being stoned, except even worse. I mean, and along with that also comes depression too. I mean, it's like it chews the shit out of your C and D and your B and those nutrients that you need to keep you happy and functioning. And I'm sure it's your immune system that's really taxing on that to get it down to where you're not feeling chipper and happy and all that. But anyway, yeah, I felt really, really good in class today, and I've come to the decision that I definitely need to be doing more of my night mat kind of thing. Because, I mean, when I came back to class today after taking a full week off, I mean, actually it was closer to 9 days. Even after that, after having been gone that period of time and not even getting a really full warm-up before class, I like to do like 3 minutes on the treadmill. Just a little, a little bit to get my heart spiking, But yeah, I didn't even get that in today, and usually I need that because, like, for whatever reason, I need to peak out my adrenaline once, or really tax my cardiovascular system really hard for just a short period of time, get my heart rate up there to 70, 80, 90%, whatever percent it needs to be at for you to start sweating your brains out and whatnot. And from there, though, if I go to class after that, even if I get in a really tight situation, it's a lot easier for me to breathe because I guess it's my lungs have already been kind of expanded open and my heart's been warmed up a little bit from all that running. And so, yeah, I didn't even get that in today. And when I went into class, I was really expecting to be dragging ass, but I was one of the fastest guys on the warm-ups. So, I feel like I'm ready to come back to it. But as far as what we worked today, I had a lot of trouble with this one. It was a setup from mission control going into the truck. And I had the hardest time remembering how to get my legs in a position where I have my opponent locked down. Like I can do a lockdown with my legs, I can manage a good lockdown with my legs, and a really tight lockdown at that. But for some reason, I was having trouble remembering to switch my legs off. Like there's a spot where you go from your top leg to your bottom leg, hooking around their top leg to hold it in place while you get a figure four on it and really lock it down, And for some reason, I was having the hardest time remembering to do that fucking lockdown. So I don't know. I guess I'm really expecting too much. I did have 9 days off. But it seems like it drifts away so quickly if you're not actively doing it every single day or every other day or something that it just drifts right away from you. But I did manage okay for the most part. There were a couple little things that I was doing on it that the instructor did not show us to do, and I don't know if it was because I don't know to do it, don't think to do it, or something. I don't know. But there's a spot on it when you're doing the you do the shift over, where you've got your hands on your opponent's knees, and you just hold them fixed, and you go from a position where your right leg is closer to their left leg to where you're dominantly in tied, like right down onto their right leg, where you've got it bent, and you've got them crowded, and you got your right hand on their left knee or on their hip. And see, one thing I was noticing is there's a spot right there when you're doing your slide through, when you're sliding your knee across their thigh. You shift over to where you've got their right leg down and their left leg up, and then you do a knee slide on their inside thigh and get to side control. Well, on the side control thing, one of the things I was doing, and it wasn't something that he showed us to do, but I was taking my left hand and was grabbing my opponent's right elbow and pushing it with my hand, and that kept him from being able to bring his elbow in and keep me from passing his guard and getting into that side control position. But it felt really, really smooth too, because on this particular move, you're supposed to be going from a side control to a reverse side control, to where you're facing your opponent's feet, and then you kind of lunge back a little bit with your hips and forward with your head, and get hooked around the leg to bring it over and tie it up with your legs. But I felt like if I grabbed his elbow, his tendency is to want to try and pull that elbow down to his hip, and I'm putting probably 60-70% of my weight on the hand that I got on his elbow. So, I mean, that tricep isn't strong enough to hold up 160 pounds, man. I'm just going to mow through it that way. But I was able to get my hip really high up towards his armpit that way. And I feel like that's a point that the instructor wasn't really concentrating on, was bringing hips back and head forward on that. And I noticed when he was doing it that that's the way he was executing it. And so, I don't know. I still had trouble with it. I'm still going to need another year before I'm going fluidly with it. But it was good. All told, it was a good class. Anyway, let's go ahead and throw down with some music. And we're going to start with body count, because that's what we do. But what song? We didn't play it at all last week because, we were only here for 2 days. And I did actually make a rare exception and opened it up with a couple different songs. But I think we can go back to it. Here it is. Carnivore, First Dance by Body Count, here on Coin Metal. And that was Ministry with Faith Collapsing. Well, my faith is not collapsing. I happen to be aware of the entire electoral process, as most of you are that have actually studied American civics. It's not one of those things where you get to just have everything your way and that there aren't actual laws involved, but there are. So, one of these days we'll figure that out, hopefully sooner than later. But my program seems to be deciding that it doesn't want to work right now, but we're going to figure that one out and get reconnected here. No problemo. Bam. There we go. So anyway, as far as what we're going to get into today, I've been doing a little bit of digging around, and one of these times I want to do an episode about something that's actually useful to some of you, and that would be social media that's at least crypto based. And there's a few of them out there. I think it's Library is one of them. Oh, well, there's Steemit and Hive, the post-Justin Sun fork of Steemit. But from what I understand, Hive is actually doing relatively well, especially for a fork. That's one thing that I've noticed in the crypto space is that either a fork has real organic support or it's nothing. So like when you look at Bitcoin, you got Bitcoin Cash, you got Bitcoin Pizza, Bitcoin Gold, blah, 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 like 8 billion fucking forks of it. That was it was almost another attempt at the alt bloom, but they were claiming the association to Bitcoin. And if you read their white papers, some of them have absolutely no relationship with Bitcoin whatsoever. So it helps to educate yourself on that stuff. But anyway, it was like a secondary kind of alt bloom, but people didn't have enough balls or whatever to launch their own projects and try and generate their own user base. They were trying to flag off of the user bases of other coins. And so, yeah, there was this plethora of Bitcoin forks that came out. And if you notice, though, there's a great many of them that have fallen off to the wayside. I think there's still like Bitcoin Gold, and I'm sure somewhere out there's like 3 or 4 of them that are still bumbling around out there. But, the primary ones that you have for Bitcoin are Bitcoin Cash, and BSV. Now, Bitcoin Cash is getting ready to do another fork of some sort here pretty soon. But I don't know that one will actually come to fruition. It's I don't know. It's a weird situation where the Bitcoin Cash ABC crowd wants to do one thing, and the other primary group of developers want to do something else. But it really comes down to what the miners want to do. And from what I have seen so far, it seems like Bitcoin Cash has a more intuitive or a better relationship between miners and developers, that when they want certain changes done, they go through relatively quickly. And it's not like Bitcoin Cash is a small network either. It's in the exahashes, so it's a decent sized network out there. So to get that level of consensus is pretty significant. It kind of tells you that the vast majority of them are on the same page. It's a good thing. But we've seen like in Ethereum where they've proposed going to POS like what? Like 5 times, where they've made major efforts to try and migrate the coin over to POS. And at this point, I guess they're generating some sort of staking pool. And that's supposed to generate enough support to cause it to go to POS or some shit like that. But basically, it's like the thought is that if you put up enough money that you're going to be able to steal the network from the miners. Well, unless you're replacing them with other miners and are able to do so with a higher level of hash supporting your chain, I don't know that that's actually going to work. And like I said, they've been trying to do this multiple times. And Vitalik has come out and said, oh yeah, I think that we're supposed to go to Ethereum 2.0. We were always supposed to go to proof of stake. Yeah, whatever. I knew when they were going through that argument, and I remember it. It was like it was at least like 8 months long, where they were like, "Oh, we're going to be a POS coin. Oh no, we're going to be a proof of work coin. Oh no, we're going to be a POS coin. Oh no, we're going to be a proof." And they bumbled around and fought, and finally they settled on, we're going to start as a proof of work coin and then migrate over to proof of stake. And, and the proof of work miners were like, fuck it. We'll put our ASICs to the Ethereum network. We'll support that. And they made money from doing so. But, the Vitalik has always been in the background saying, oh no, but we're going to go to proof of stake eventually. We gotta scale. We gotta make it to where, one person is servicing millions of other fucking people, and they don't have any real stake in shit, and that one person can decide whatever the fuck they want. Yeah, oh yeah. And I mean, it's like they completely forgot the idea of a central point of failure. It's like, well, nobody even talks about that anymore. But it's worse because all of the second layer stuff is all dependent upon on-chain transactions. That has not changed. If it's associated with either the Ethereum blockchain, the on-chain blockchain, or Bitcoin's blockchain, or any other coin's blockchain, if it's associated at all with it, it's dependent upon the fucking miners. It's dependent upon the constraints of these networks. And so, any of the rules that need to change or whatever to facilitate these wonderbutt things, or make them work better, it has to go through the miners. All of it. Now, it's not the nodes. They put up proposed block images. It's up to the miners whether or not they want to accept them and mine them. And that's where the whole consensus thing comes in. Is if they're not flagging support for certain text transaction types, they don't go through. They don't get counted or included in a block. So like if all of the miners right now decide, you know what, we're not going to flag support for BIP9 anymore. All of the SegWit shit and everything that was based on it goes away. And they can do that. It's in their hands right now. And so this is both a blessing and a curse. If there were ever a government entity that dominated the Bitcoin blockchain the Bitcoin network as far as the number of miners and the amount of hashing power they're dedicating to the network, then they can change the consensus rules. And it's by the rules of Bitcoin. If people are willing to put up the hashing power to make a change, it'll fucking go through. And so that's the whole threat of a 51% attack, is that you're going to have somebody come along who doesn't have any real long-term stake in the coin, who just dumps a shit ton of hashing power on the network specifically and solely to maintain a sustained attack long enough to implement a change in the protocol, in the consensus protocol, and nobody can do anything about it because they're the dominant miners on the network. And it's advertised as a 51% attack, as though the consensus protocol is set in stone and the only people in the entire fucking world are the Bitcoin Foundation or Liquid or Lightning or one of these other groups to make any kind of changes. And as far as I understand it, the Bitcoin Foundation, Blockstream, They still have control over the GitHub repository for Bitcoin. So even if you wanted to present a BIP, you got to get through them and their little, how should I say it, qualling kind of process before it's even going to get posted up on GitHub for people to download. So that's how this shit really works. And it's one of the things that makes me laugh when I hear about big entities or governments and whatever talking about doing projects that are going to be built upon transactions that are occurring on either the Bitcoin or the Ethereum blockchain. Because these people are operating under the assumption that the protocol, the consensus protocol, is set in stone. It's never going to change. The miners are never going to say, fuck this, we don't want to do this. Or millions and millions of little nodes out there might come online and decide that they don't want to support certain BIPs, or they don't want to support certain implementations. And all of a sudden, the consensus protocol changes, and all of the bullshit that the banks and all of the bullshit that the governments have been trying to build on top of it falls like a fucking like a house of cards, because they are not putting up any fucking hashing power to support any of the shit that they want. And this is the biggest problem with crypto, is that people think you could just, I'm going to write some software and I'm going to put it out there, and the miners are going to fucking implement it. They're going to do it because I want them to do it. And I'm going to put all kinds of pressure on them. I'm going to put it all over Twitter. I'm going to do an astroturfing campaign and mimic all kinds of support and all kinds of organic support for this change that I want to go through. And people are going to do what I want them to do. Well, Ethereum is still a proof of work coin. After, 2-3 years now of the developers writing all kinds of neat implementations, all kinds of VIPs where, they can flag support at a certain block height, and the whole thing will transition over to being a proof of stake network. And all the proof of stake hash power is going to come from somewhere and just take up this huge fucking network, supporting this huge fucking network, and no adversarial attackers are going to attack it. No, we're fine now. We just lowered the cost of mining on it, which means we've also lowered the cost of hacking it. But we're not gonna. We're gonna live like, that risk doesn't exist. No, it doesn't exist. Give me a fucking break, man. This is money, people. People want to take it from you as much as you want to make it. Somebody wants to take it from you. So you want to make that expensive. Anyway, so the first thing I got here is on globalnewswire.com. Bots Inc. accelerates development of the world's first Bitcoin ATM consortium and updates potential revenue projections for 2021. Now, this is a report, I believe, that was in association with a CoinDesk article. I think we should probably read the CoinDesk article first, because it might give us a little more context on this. Oh, where the hell did I put that thing? No. Oh, man. I got my tabs all over the place again. I did make an effort to. Oh, here it is. So this is the original article, and this is from modernconsensus.com. And the thing I'd started reading was the original article that was referring back to, but I thought it was actually the announcement. Let's go with this one for right now, and then we'll go back to the other one for additional context. But anyway, this is authored on November 9th, 2020, and the source was Bots Inc. Okay. San Juan, Puerto Rico, November 9th, 2020, Bots Inc., the company and emerging innovator of products, technologies, and services for the rapidly growing cybersecurity, digital robotics, automation, and AI manufacturing industry, announced today that its wholly owned subsidiary, First Bitcoin Capital, LLC, is in discussions with a major law firm in order to enforce our Bitcoin ATM patent against those operating Bitcoin ATMs to collect royalty payments. While in these negotiations, we are reaching out to individual operators to reach an amicable agreement without litigation, while offering those operators to join a consortium of Bitcoin ATMs. As Bitcoin prices surged to their highest levels since 2018, reaching over $15,000, we expect transactions in this lucrative market to increase significantly. An article published in MarketWatch.com partially explained the why. The recent rally for the progenitor to the cryptographic currency craze comes as PayPal Holdings announced plans to accept cryptocurrencies and allow its use for merchant payments. PayPal's announcement is an ever-expanding recognition of the legitimacy of digital currencies. BTZ1 announced on October 29, 2020, that it acquired a subsidiary from First Bitcoin Capital Corp., which includes the rights to U.S. patent number 9,135,787 Bitcoin kiosk, ATM device, and system integrating enrollment protocol and method of using the same, known as the Bitcoin ATM patent. This patent is related to the purchase and sale of cryptocurrencies utilizing a Bitcoin ATM or kiosk that allows customers to purchase Bitcoin or other cryptocurrencies by using cash, debit, or credit cards. Many of the elements of that intellectual property will be, quote, standard essential claims which are critical for the Bitcoin ATM networks to operate. All Bitcoin ATM manufacturing companies could be forced to use the patented technology to manufacture and sell their Bitcoin ATMs, as well as companies and individuals that own and operate Bitcoin ATM networks locally and nationwide. Yeah, you're barking up the wrong tree, but I'll explain this soon. Quote, per transaction royalty payments will be negotiated for a several-year term. Some agreements, especially with the manufacturers, could cover previous years and or a significant number of coming years, says Paul Rosenberg, Bots Inc. CEO. Quote, as those terms have not been finalized yet. Yeah, those never will. The company has already begun negotiations with a major law firm with a very successful track record in enforcing patent rights when working on a contingency basis. According to ATM Radar, as of November 2020, there are over 9,400 Bitcoin ATMs installed in the USA. Average Bitcoin ATM kiosk processes 100 to 180 transactions monthly. This translates to 14 to 18 million as potential income for the company per year. Like traditional bank ATMs, a Bitcoin ATM is a kiosk with internet portals through which customers can engage in a transaction of buying and selling cryptocurrencies. The difference is that traditional bank-owned ATMs allow customers to withdraw and deposit cash or checks, whereas Bitcoin ATMs only allow customers to buy and sell cryptocurrencies using cash or credit cards. Most Bitcoin ATMs are comprised of a monitor, a QR scanner, a bill acceptor, face recognition camera, and a dispenser, as described in our patent. On the back end, these components are connected to a platform and internet to make buying and selling of cryptocurrency, mainly Bitcoin, quickly, easily, and secure. However, Bitcoin ATMs are different from bank ATMs in that they are not connected to a customer's bank account. In contrast, they are connected directly to a cryptocurrency exchange or Bitcoin mining farm via the internet. Quote, the very first Bitcoin ATM was placed in 2013 at a coffee shop in Vancouver, Canada. It took 6 years to turn this single machine into a multi-million-dollar industry worldwide. At the same time, future growth could easily dwarf this embryonic progress, says Paul Rosenberg. Yeah, you're not going to get it. Bots Inc. is also developing a worldwide Bitcoin ATM network similar to the bank ATM networks to allow customers to buy and sell cryptocurrency on any Bitcoin ATM kiosk, regardless of who operates the kiosk. The company will be offering a fractional ownership program, allowing owner-operators of the crypto ATMs the opportunity to profit from using this future global ATM network. BTZI is the founder of the first worldwide Bitcoin ATM consortium, or network blockchain governed powered computer network that will enable Bitcoin ATM customer wallets issued by a Bitcoin ATM operator that will be a member of the network to be used to perform Bitcoin ATM transactions through ATMs that belong to another operator of the network. This is especially convenient when traveling abroad, where Bitcoin ATMs may be widely available. A network is a common way of delivering, buying, or selling cryptocurrency services that increase the network value by linking many operators together. Basically they want you to put all of your Bitcoin, assuming you're a Bitcoin ATM operator, they want you to put your Bitcoin in their wallet. Continuing. Linking many operators together, for example, the value of a cellular telephone network to customers increases with the number of customers that can be reached via the global network. Similarly, Bitcoin ATM networks will link together Bitcoin ATMs in various locations, giving the customers of each operator greater access to their crypto accounts. About Bots Inc., headquartered in San Juan, Puerto Rico, Bots Inc. is a publicly traded OTC markets innovator. Trading under the symbol BTZI is a diversified company developing and servicing blockchain and robotic solutions for its clientele. The company is committed to driving the innovations needed to shape the future of digital robotic automation management through digital technology and decentralized blockchain solutions. Dude, these fucking people are stupid. So, anyway, what they're trying to do, or what this seems to me to be anyway, is they're sensing the reality that in the not so distant future, fees are going to get higher. And so they are trying to consolidate multiple Bitcoin ATM operators. And this whole patent trolling thing is just a means of trying to extort them into it, some sort of threat, a little bit of carrot to offset a little bit of stick to offset the carrot here, basically. Is that, Bitcoin ATM operators, you guys should stay independent. That way you can determine your own terms. If you want to support an altcoin that this fucking consortium doesn't want you to support, they'll be able to tell you, no, you can't support that altcoin now. We don't do that on our network. They don't have any right to tell you jack shit when it comes to cryptocurrencies. If you're hosting a wallet or you're hosting an ATM, that's up to you. And this whole idea that they're going to be able to enforce some sort of patent on you is fucking silly. I mean, really, what do you need to be an OTC Bitcoin dealer? You need a willing partner, somebody who wants to or has the cash and is willing to exchange it for whatever amount of Bitcoin you agree to, and whatever terms that you agree to. And see, this is a point that most people do not understand about cryptocurrencies, is that as long as you don't have some entity like Bots Inc. or Coinbase or any of these entities, as long as you do not have one of them involved in your transactions and you are using Bitcoin on a peer-to-peer basis, there is absolutely no need for them. And whatever the transaction costs, it will only cost more if you have a fully licensed, fully regulated entity performing your transaction for you. And not just in taxes that are going to be imposed on your transaction that simply are not due for you to pay, but also in the charges that are imposed by the third-party entity. And they will always ask for a premium on whatever they are paying to facilitate your transaction. It doesn't matter if it only costs them 10 cents. It doesn't matter if it costs them $1.50. You are still going to pay, and probably at least a flat rate or even a progressive rate. And you'll be informed of it up front. But they are also going to retain the caveat that they will be able to adjust them upward as market conditions change. And there's going to be a point when it's even too expensive to do business through them. And they'll have to sell because their amount of revenue from being produced from people doing transactions through them will go down. And so, of course, they're going to have to sell to an entity like JP Morgan Chase or Goldman Sachs and US Bank or Fidelity, and we're all the way back to zero, not even one anymore. We're back down to square zero, where Bitcoin never even happened, and they just have a new network to allow you to transact on. Only this time, it's entirely digital, and it's entirely in their control. And so they will be able to tell you pretty much when and how and what you will spend your fucking money on. Is that what you got into crypto for? Not me. Anyway, let's go ahead and throw back down into some music. And as far as where to go next, I think this is appropriate. Amon Amarth, Crack the Sky, here on Coin Metal. And that was White Zombie with I Zombie. And so, as far as where else we're going to go tonight, I was gotten a little bit of a tirade and wrote a fucking book on social media, as does tend to happen occasionally. I'm going to turn that down a little bit. Anyway, so I wanted to get into this stuff, and I think this is fucking hilarious. I've long speculated that the whole reason for doing segregated witness on Bitcoin was to make the transactions witness data, i.e. your signatures, your partner in commerce's signatures, to make that malleable. You know, they on Twitter at the time, they were talking about transaction malleability, and they were saying the transaction malleability problem. Now, when they would say it, that's the three words they would use. The transaction malleability problem. Now, I speculated at the time that the problem wasn't that they were able to, the transactions were malleable. No. That wasn't the problem. The problem was that the witness data for the transactions was not malleable in the current iteration of Bitcoin. That's why SegWit had to be introduced, and the witness data, i.e. the signature data, should be segregated away from the transaction. Just so we can fit more transactions in the block, and we can't. They said it was a block size increase, but we can actually fit less transactions in the block now. You used to be able to fit, 3,000 to 6,000 transactions per block. Now you're lucky if you get over 1,000. And of course, it depends on how many entities are using SegWit and how many entities are doing LN transactions and how much transaction data there is associated with the transactions. But the point being that it wasn't actually an improvement to Bitcoin. Most of the shit that they burdened the Bitcoin blockchain with, any entity could have been doing in the background on their own. But they've impregnated these transactions with the optionability, or these options, into Bitcoin itself, so that whatever changes or implementations or whatever they want to put that data to, all the transactions that fit that format will be subject to it. So if we're talking about things like taxation, oh hey, you did a transaction and you didn't pay us, so give us our fucking cut. I mean, that kind of thing. And this kind of leads a little bit of credence to it. I got this thing here. It's on TechCrunch.com. What's all this about Europe wanting crypto backdoors? And this is by Natasha Lomas, and it was authored 4:44 a.m. PST on November 9th. So no penis. A press report emerged over the weekend claiming European lawmakers who are worried about terrorism are speeding towards a ban on end-to-end encryption Spoiler, it's a little more nuanced than that. Read on for our breakdown of what's actually going on. No, a report in the Austrian press yesterday appeared to suggest a ban incoming on end-to-end encryption, which the headline linked to a recent terror attack in the country. In fact, there have been discussions ongoing between member states on the topic of encryption and whether/how to regulate it for several years now. The report is based on a draft resolution of the Council of the European Union dated November 6th. Per the draft document, a final text, which could incorporate further amendments, is due to be presented to the Council on November 19th for adoption. The COEU decision-making body is comprised of representatives of member states' governments. It's responsible for setting the political direction for the bloc. However, it's the European Commission which is responsible for drafting legislation. So, this is not in any way draft EU legislation. One Commission insider we spoke to, who's involved in the cybersecurity strategy, couched the resolution as a political gesture, and most likely an empty one. Yes, just like the fat F. What does the COEU draft resolution actually say? It starts by asserting that the EU's full support for, quote, the development, implementation, and the use of strong encryption, which would be a very odd position to hold if you also intend to ban E2EE. Then it discusses, quote, challenges to public security that flow from criminals having easy access to the same technologies that are used to protect vital civic infrastructure, suggesting criminals can use E2EE to make lawful access to their communications, quote, extremely challenging or practically impossible. No. Not lawful access. Enforcement of laws. See, the difference here is that the infrastructure that's utilizing this end-to-end encryption, they're doing so for privacy. They don't want to give access to law enforcement entities to their computers, to their networks, to their business. It's none of the government's fucking business what their business is unless it involves actually harming people. Actually harming people. And I don't mean doing business that doesn't involve taxing each other to fucking death on behalf of the government. I mean actually harms people, like, bombs and guns and shit like that. But none of this stuff actually is threatening in that way. The great threat is that they can't reach into your pocket and yank money out. That's it. That's the lawful access that they think that they need into your shit. Continuing on. Extremely challenging or practically impossible. Actually, entirely impossible, but we'll get back to that. This is, of course, a very familiar discussion in security circles, regularly fueled by, quote, the Five Eyes nation's push for greater surveillance powers, and one which recurs repeatedly in relation to the technology industry owing to developments in communications tech. But note, the COEU does not say access to encrypted data is actually impossible. Instead, the resolution moves on to call for discussion of how to ensure the powers of competent security and criminal justice authorities can be preserved while ensuring full respect for due legal process and EU rights and freedoms, such as notably the right to respect for private life and communications and the right to protection of personal data. Something that they kind of don't take all that seriously. Quote, the document, not quote, but stating, the document suggests a better balance should be created between these competing interests. The principle of security through encryption and security despite encryption must be upheld in its entirety is how it's phrased. Let's look back at that. The principle of security through encryption and security despite encryption must be upheld in its entirety. Yes, I agree with that, but you can't do that and have backdoor access, because if you have backdoor access, other motherfuckers have backdoor access. This is a truism that one of these motherfucking days, somebody is going to pull an exploit off hard enough for you to fucking understand that. Continuing on. The specific call is for governments, industry, research, and academia to work together to strategically create this balance. Okay, let me put it to you this way. You're not going to recreate this balance. If a 9-year-old can understand how to code and can craft for themselves a currency or an application that employs encryption, they will be able to deploy that. And there isn't a fucking thing you can do about it. So resuming this quote-unquote balance that you thought you had, but you didn't really have anyway, is pretty much impossible. And let's see here. The draft delegations will find in this attachment the revised version of the draft council resolution on encryption. It reflects the comments received from the member states before and during the informal VTC meeting of HJA counselor, blah, 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 November 3rd, blah, blah, blah. It's just the document itself. Okay, does the draft resolution call for encryption to be backdoored? No. Indeed, the council member specifically writes, emphasis ours, quote, competent authorities must be able to access data in a lawful and targeted manner. So in other words, not the way the NSA does it, where they just copy everything, intercept everything, and then just mill through it and decide what's lawful and unlawful. Continuing. Data in a lawful and targeted manner, in full respect of fundamental rights and the data protection regime, while upholding cybersecurity. Technical solutions for gaining access to encrypted data must comply with the principles of legality, transparency, necessity, and proportionality. So, the push here, beyond the overarching political push to be seen to be doing something, quote, pro-security, is for ways to improve targeted access to data, but also that such targeting respect EU principles that link to fundamental rights, like privacy of communications. That doesn't sum to an E2EE ban or backdoor. But what does the resolution say about the legal framework? The Council of Ministers want the Commission to carry out a review of relevant existing regulations with relevance to ensure it's all pulling in the same direction and therefore contributing to law enforcement being able to operate as efficiently as possible. There is a mention of, quote, potential technical solutions at this point, but again, the emphasis is on any such law enforcement aids supporting the use of their investigatory powers within domestic frameworks that comply with EU law, and a further emphasis on, quote, upholding fundamental rights and preserving the advantages of encryption. Security of information is a vital advantage of encryption, previously discussed in the document, so it's essentially calling for preserving security without literally spelling that out. No. It seems to me it's probably placing it in an indefinite state, because obviously you still have questions. Continuing. This portion of the draft document has several strike-throughs, so it looks most likely to be subject to wording changes. Yeah, meaning that they're going to make it more draconian over time. But for a signal of the direction of travel, one bit of rewording emphasis the need for transparency should there be joint working with comm services providers on developing any solutions, and a backdoor that everyone is told about obviously wouldn't be a backdoor. Another suggestion in the draft calls for upskilling relevant authorities to boost their technical and operational expertise, aka more cyber training for police. In a final section, joint working to improve relevant coordination and expertise across the EU is again highlighted by the co-EU as key to bolstering authorities' investigatory capabilities. There's also talk of developing, quote, innovative approaches in view of new technologies, but the conclusion makes a point of stating clearly, quote, there should be no single prescribed technical solution to provide access to encrypted data, aka no golden key / universal backdoor. No, that's not what it says. It says there should be no single prescribed technical solution. It doesn't say anything about we have several single prescribed technical solutions that we could apply. It doesn't say that at all. It says there should be no. It doesn't say that there isn't any. Continuing on. Or that they don't want one. So there's nothing to be worried about then, right? Well, the Commission may feel some pressure over the issue as it works on its new cyber strategy, so it could get some political push on specific policy ideas, although we're unlikely to see much on this front before next year. The COEU isn't setting out any policy ideas yet. At most, it's asking for help formulating some. TechCrunch spoke to Dr. Lukas Olenchnik, an independent cybersecurity researcher and consultant based in Europe, to get his thoughts on the draft resolution. Whoa. Europe? Isn't that like a country and then or like a continent and then there's countries within quote-unquote Europe? I don't know. Anyway, continuing. He agreed there is no broadside against E2EE in the draft, nor any near-term prospect of legislation flowing from it. Indeed, he suggested the COEU appears not to know what to do, hence looking to outside experts in academic and industry for help. Quote, first, there is no talk of backdoors. The message sets things clearly with respect to encryption being important for cybersecurity and privacy, he told us. As for the topic of this document, it is a long-term process in the exploratory phase now. Problems and ideas are identified. Nothing will happen immediately. Quote, it's not even getting near to banning E2EE. It appears they do not know what to do exactly. So, among the ideas it is to perhaps set up a, quote, high-level expert group. The document speaks about engaging academia. This process is sometimes initiated by the Commission to identify recommendations, which may or may not be used in the policy process. It would then revolve around who would get to be admitted to such a group, and this varies a lot. Quote, for example, the AI group was seen as quite reasonable, while the other dedicated one on disinformation was in fact geared towards the EU media figures rather than researchers or concrete expertise. We do not know where all this will lead. Olejnik expressed doubt that the Council could drive legislation on its own in this case, given the complexity involved. Quote, it's too premature to speak of any legislation, he said. Legislative process in the EU can be quite complex to understand, but the EU Council would be unable to pull such a complex thing on their own. A new strategic approach? Quote, security despite encryption. The policy term blends two meanings of security, technical and non-technical at the same time, showing that reversible encryption systems are means to guarantee security. Yeah, whatever. But he did highlight the COEU's coining of the phrase security despite encryption as a noteworthy development, suggesting it's unclear where this novel framing might lead in policy terms. So, As ever, the security debate around encryption demands a close eye. Quote, "What I find of particular importance is coining the term security despite encryption. It is both unfortunate and ingenious. But the problem with this technology policy term is that it may consciously blend policy understanding of physical security with technical security as guaranteed today by encryption. This puts the two in direct opposition," he said, adding, quote, "Where the fallout would lead is anyone's guess. I believe this process is far from over. But couldn't there be a push to introduce some kind of, quote, lawful intercept mechanism across the EU? There would be huge challenges to such a step given all EU legal principles and rights that any mechanism would need to respect. The co-EU's draft resolution reiterates this multiple times, highlighting the need for security activity to represent fundamental rights like privacy of communications and principles of legality, transparency, necessity, and proportionality, for example. Except, just as a side note, on that point, they want to be the ones determining the intensity and focus. Not you. They want to take that out of your hands. Continuing. Domestic surveillance laws in several EU member states have also recently been found falling short in this regard by Europe's highest courts. So, there would be a clear path to challenging any security overreach in the courts. That means that even if some kind of intercept mechanism could be pushed through an EU legislative process via enough political will to drive it, there's no doubt it would face fierce legal challenge and the prospect of being unpicked by the courts. Happy to drag this to the courts if it would ever happen. Mark Schrems, November 8th, 2020. Yeah. As for a view on the notion... wait a minute. I guess that was the end of it? Okay. Yeah, unpicked by the courts, and I guess this one was the first comment on it, is happy to drag this to the courts if it would ever happen. And that was by Max Schrems, and that was a response to the article we just read. Next one is, as for a view on the notion put forward in the draft resolution of seeking a, quote, better balance between the security and privacy, whether it might be pushed towards something like the Ghost Protocol advocated by GCHQ in recent years, is a, quote, exceptional access mechanism, but which critics argue would both undermine user trust and introduce a blanket security risk that's all but equivalent to a backdoor. Old gentleman, I guess that was like some sort of interruption in this article, but we're continuing on with it. Allegednik told us, quote, undermining encryption is a tricky territory because modern technology goes in a direction of more security, not less. In modern security ecosystems, it would be hard to imagine a lawful intercept functionality known from the telecommunication infrastructure. For private business, it's also a question of trust. Can the individual users freely move their social interactions online even further? It's a question measured in billions of dollars. Yeah, Facebook and Twitter, they're going through this issue right now, and I believe that Twitter is probably going to get their wish of a lot of people just not bothering to try and get their accounts back. I mean, I've had multiple accounts now suspended on Twitter because they decided they didn't like what I was saying, and for no other reason. Just, I don't like what you're saying. No, you don't get to talk on our platform anymore. And I mean, that's reasonable in that it is their platform. They can run it however they want. I don't really have any problem with that. And in all honesty, I do not want them turned into a fucking public utility, because all that will do is inhibit potential competitors from coming online. You'll allow Facebook and Twitter to set the standards for the regulation and the regulatory frameworks and make it to where only they can fit it, and everybody else, all the smaller ones, will have to lose access to U.S. customers and U.S. users because Twitter and Facebook said, you can't do that. You can't do what you're doing, or you can't do that without having to pay this massive fucking fee that we have no trouble covering because, we've been in existence for the last decade. We've enriched ourselves and gotten really, really fat on all kinds of lucre. We got all kinds of money to war chest, big ass war chest to fight any kind of legal battles or whatever. We'll just stomp you into the ground. So either sell out to us or get fucking regulated, because otherwise you're not going to be able to do business with people in the U.S. That's what they want to be able to say to people. But they're getting exactly the opposite right now, where people are just saying, oh, what, you don't like what I have to say on your network? Okay, I'm going to look on another fucking platform, another social media platform, and see if my friends are there. And if they are, that's where I'm going to go. And y'all can just go fuck yourselves. Facebook and Twitter, they've had such a huge user base. They just take it for granted that you're always going to be there. You know what? MySpace had that reality shifted for them in all of, I think it was like two weeks, maybe a month, where pretty much all of their users abandoned the platform and went straight over to Facebook and Twitter. I would imagine that if it's still up, it might actually see a resurgence now. You know what I mean? Because at least with MySpace, you were able to edit your own page and shit. But anyway, point being that that's the kind of control that a lot of these entities, the FATF or the EU's Council on this shit, that's a lot of the access that they're looking to get. Is that they don't really care that you're encrypting it because you don't actually want to show them what you're doing. You want to keep it private. You want to keep it personal. They don't want to honor that. They want some sort of mechanism that they can implant in there, and you're running as an overlay on their shit, and they can see your traffic in real time. So they don't even have to worry about decrypting it. They can just look at what you're doing and say, oh, okay, yep, I can reverse that transaction. Bam. And it's like it never even happened. Except you might not get the money back because they'll put it in their wallet instead of your wallet, and then you'll just be out the money and you won't get the product. But so yeah, that's it's interesting stuff. And I actually did click on the move that to English, not German. I think this is an article in association with what we just read. And yeah, I want to get into it because it seems like it's pretty specific. So let's inflate this a little bit bigger. What the fuck? Oh man, you gotta be fucking kidding me. Okay. Alright. There we go. This is on fm4.orf.at. I don't even know. This is by Eric Moschel. EU encryption ban follows the terrorist attack. And this is shared on Facebook. Oh no. Okay, so anyway, it's a penis. Yes. The terrorist attack in Vienna is used in the EU Council of Ministers to enforce a ban on secure encryption for services such as WhatsApp, Signal, and many others in the rapid boiling process. This emerges from an internal document dated November 6 from the German presidency to the delegations of the member states in the Council, which ORF.at has received. This should now be understood under the, quote, further steps against terrorism that French President Emmanuel Macron wants to discuss with Federal Chancellor Sebastian Kurz, OVP, in a video conference at the beginning of the week. The decision has already been agreed to such an extent that it can be passed in the video conference of the Interior and Justice Ministers at the beginning of December without further discussion. Let's see. It's Brussels, November 6, 2020. Subject Draft Council Resolution on Encryption, Security Through Encryption, and Security Despite Encryption. EU Council of Ministers. On the right are the Council working groups to which this text was sent. The first revised version of which was apparently ready on Friday. As is customary on the Council of Ministers, the document was classified as a, quote, limit, as for this reason it is nowhere available to the public apart from the Council. It is made available here. And let's see, we got that. Click on it. Let's see how many pages this thing is. Oh, it's only about 5 pages. Let's get into it. And so this, which we managed to scrounge down, is from the Council of the European Union. And it's from the Presidency to delegations, subject Draft Council Resolution on Encryption, Security Through Encryption, and Security Despite Encryption. Delegations will find in attachment the revised version of the Draft Council Resolution on Encryption. It reflects the comments received from the member states before and during the informal VTC meeting of the JHA Councilors Encryption on November 3, 2020. Unless delegations send in further substantive comments accompanied by concrete wording suggestions by 12th November 2020 noon to Paul, and it gives us nice little email addresses. The Presidency intends to present this revised text for endorsement to COSI VTC on 19th November 2020 in view of further submission to Corper I item on November 25th, 2020, followed by adoption by the Council via written procedure. Please be advised that the form of the document has been adjusted to, quote, a Council resolution so that the text could be processed for adoption via a written procedure by the Council in case it takes place in a VTC format. Changes compared to the previous version are marked in bold, underlined, and strike through. Draft Council Resolution on Encryption, Security Through Encryption, and Security Despite Encryption. Number 1. Preamble. Security Through Encryption and Security Despite Encryption. The European Union fully supports the development, implementation, and use of strong encryption. Encryption is a necessary means of protecting fundamental rights and the digital security of governments, industry, and society. At the same time, the European Union needs to ensure the ability of competent authorities in the area of security and criminal justice, ergo, law enforcement and judicial authorities, to exercise their lawful powers, both online and offline, meaning they got to be able to gank all your fucking assets online or offline. According to the European Council conclusions of 1st and 2nd November 2020, EU CO 13/20, the EU will leverage its tools and regulatory powers to help shape global rules and standards. It was agreed that funds under the Recovery and Resilience Facility would be used to advance objectives such as enhancing the EU's ability to protect itself against cyber threats, to provide for a secure communication environment, especially through quantum encryption, and to ensure access to data for judicial and law enforcement purposes. Number 2. Current use/state of encryption. In today's world, encryption technology is increasingly used in all areas of public and private life. It is a means to protect governments, critical infrastructures, civil society, citizens, and industry by ensuring the privacy, confidentiality, and data integrity of communications and personal data. It is evident that all parties benefit from high-performance encryption technology. Encryption has been identified by EU data protection authorities as an important tool contributing, for instance, to the protection of personal data transferred outside of the EU, but subject to the requirement of an essentially equivalent level of protection, which according to the Court of Justice is a legal requirement for data transfers. Not only are electronic devices and applications increasingly programmed to encrypt stored user data by default, but more and more communication channels are also secured by end-to-end encryption. This is positively reflected in an increasing response by the communication and application industry, where the majority of instant messaging apps and other online platforms have also implemented end-to-end encryption. Number 3, challenges for ensuring public security. Yeah, you can't do that. Anyway, continuing. Quote, digital life and cyberspace not only present great opportunities, but also considerable challenges. The digitalization of modern societies brings with it certain vulnerabilities and the potential for exploitation for criminal purposes by criminals and governments alike. Thus, criminals can include readily available off-the-shelf encryption solutions designed for legitimate purposes in their modus operandi. At the same time, law enforcement is increasingly dependent on access to electronic evidence to effectively fight terrorism, organized crime, child sexual abuse, particularly its online aspects, as well as a variety of cyber-enabled crimes. For competent authorities, access to electronic evidence is not only essential to conduct successful investigations and thereby bring criminals to justice, but also to protect victims and help ensure security and steal your money. However, there are instances where encryption renders analysis of the content of communications in the framework of access to electronic evidence extremely challenging or practically impossible, despite the fact that the access to such data would be lawful. Yeah, okay, so they managed to get a blanket warrant covering all of your effects and articles, right? So all of a sudden now the cops can investigate all your shit and steal shit from you and scrutinize what you have without expectation of honoring your privacy at any point, not digitally or personally or physically. Independently of the technology environment of the day, it is therefore essential to preserve the powers of competent authorities in the areas of security and criminal justice through lawful access to carry out their tasks as prescribed and authorized by law. Such laws providing for the enforcement powers must always fully respect due process and other safeguards, as well as other freedom and rights, and particularly the right to respect for private life and communications, and the right to the protection of personal data. It's fucking bullshit. They don't respect your shit now. They have yet to respect your shit. They just mass accumulate your shit and scrutinize your shit at will. It's like, oh God, this guy's piping up. He's saying some shit we don't like. Let's go ahead and prosecute him for one of a myriad of fucking things that we managed to catch him doing with CCTV, with fucking monitoring, constant monitoring of his internet access and use. I'm sure we can find something fucking illegal in there to fuck him over with. Give me a break, man. And the thing is this, that the entities that are suggesting this shit, they aren't even dreaming of this shit ever being applied to them. Because I'm absolutely certain if any of them were to be presented the level of, some sort of like demonstration of the level of access that is the goal that they're wanting in what they consider to be quote unquote legal access or lawful access, they would shoot it down on sight. They'd be like, fuck you. Lawful access to you is a constant feed from my fucking camera on my laptop. It could be pointed at me, laying in bed, I'm having sex. You're watching me fucking like it's some fucking porno. And here I am with some sort of faint expectation of privacy that if there is some sort of webcam in my proximity, that if I'm not in front of it, if I'm not fucking using it with an app, that it isn't functioning. It isn't operating. Nobody's watching me. But I don't trust it that far. That's why I won't own a fucking Xbox or any other gaming console that has some ability to biometrically scan me. Fuck you. Once you have a digital signature, a digital average of my physical movements and whatnot, you can mimic that shit. You can make characters do anything in a fucking video game if you have the right signature. You match my movements, you match my biometrics. You can be making up your own fucking story about what I'm doing in my living room and presenting that to people as evidence of I'm doing something fucking bad because you've got my biometric scan from head to toe, down to the fucking hair follicle, and you can mimic that. When you're playing these fucking these VR games and shit, look at the level of detail that they've managed so far. And think to yourself back to when you were playing Pong, if you are that old, like I am. It really hasn't been all that long, that progression from fucking Pong to VR. You can't imagine where it's going to be in 2 years. They're gonna be able to mimic your avatar down to the gestures you make, the language you use, the vocabulary you utilize. Fuck, they could probably just upload my YouTube channel and have every fucking word I've ever uttered. Anyway, continuing. Let's see. Lawful access to carry out their tasks as prescribed and authorized by law. I think we've already covered that. Creating a better balance. The principle of security through encryption and security despite encryption must be upheld in its entirety. The European Union continues to support strong encryption. Encryption is an anchor of confidence in digitization and in protection of fundamental rights, and should be promoted and developed. Protecting the privacy and security of communications through encryption and at the same time upholding the possibility for competent authorities in the area of security and criminal justice to lawfully hack their relevant data for legitimate, clearly defined purposes in fighting serious and or organized crimes and terrorism, including in the digital world, are extremely important. Any actions taken have to balance these interests carefully. Number 5, joining forces with the tech industry. Moving forward, the EU strives to establish an active discussion with the technology industry while associating research and academia to ensure the continued implementation and use of strong encryption technology. Competent authorities must be able to access data in a lawful and targeted manner in full respect of fundamental rights and the data protection regime while upholding cybersecurity. Technical solutions for gaining access to encrypted data must comply with the principles of legality, transparency, necessity, and proportionality. Meaning they're going to hold your data and they're going to copy all of it as you're making it, and they're going to decide on their own whether or not it's legal. Fuck you. Since there is no single way of achieving these set goals, governments, industry, research, and academia need to work together to strategically create a balance. Give me a fucking break. Legal framework. There's a clear need to review the effects arising from different regulatory frameworks in order to develop further a consistent regulatory framework across the EU that would allow competent authorities to carry out their operational tasks effectively. Potential technical solutions will have to enable authorities to use their investigatory powers, which are subject to proportionality, necessity, and judicial oversight over their domestic legislation while upholding fundamental rights and preserving the advantages of encryption. Possible solutions may need the support of service providers, should be developed in a transparent manner in cooperation with communication service providers. Such technical solutions, and they actually crossed out part of that, so let me reread that. Possible solutions should be developed in a transparent manner in cooperation with communication service providers. No, meaning they're going to develop the standards, and then they're going to tell communication service providers, these are the fucking standards, comply or lose your license. Continuing on. Such technical solutions could also require improving the technical and operational skills and expertise of competent authorities to effectively address the challenges of digitization in their work on a global scale. In line with the principle of... they crossed that one out. In line with the principle of proportionality, such measures should be prioritized. Developing technical tools aimed at supporting criminal proceedings should also be considered. Such technical tools should be subject to the principles outlined in this declaration. 7. Innovative investigative capabilities. Finally, it is of paramount importance to improve the coordination at EU level aimed at, number 1, combining the efforts of all member states and EU institutions and bodies. Now, the only reason for those bodies to exist separately is so that they can have their own regulatory frameworks and tell you what to do. Continuing on, and competing with one another. 2. Defining and establishing innovative approaches in view of new technologies. Number 3, analyzing appropriate technical and operational solutions. And number 4, provide tailored, high-quality training. They can't train you. Why? Because new shit's going to be out tomorrow. How are they going to even create a fucking a class for it? How are they going to develop a syllabus for it? And how are they going to keep you ahead of it if tomorrow there's something else that comes out? Continuing on. Technical and operational solutions anchored in a legal framework built on the principles of legality, necessity, and proportionality should be developed in close consultation with service providers and the relevant authorities, although there should be no single prescribed technical solution to provide access to encrypted data. Yeah, so I don't know how to parse this one out. They're talking in a bunch of circles, it seems to me, in order to either obfuscate their true intent while making a presentation of it. I don't know. I can say this. The likelihood of compliance on this thing, even if they were to institute these frameworks, is 0. And you know, it's in light of this that you got to consider things like Brexit. Personally, I think this is exactly the shit why Brexit would happen. You know, it's one of the reasons why Britain isn't talking about making a CBDC. Because they need to be able to cheat in their banking. It's very plain and simple. If they were even trying to give the illusion of legitimacy beyond just the claim, you know what I mean? That's pretty much it right there, is that they claim they're good for it, and we've just assumed that they are good for it for so long that that's what they're riding on. But if they were to ever have to endure the same sort of regulatory rigmarole that the entities that this stuff is trying to address, that the entities that produce this stuff, that this Council of the European Union is drafting this shit to try to address, because they're independent of the EU in and of themselves, or can be, they don't have to submit to this. See, I think that they looked at the kind of regulatory frameworks that were being presented for this, that because I'm sure that there's been some expectation since crypto came out that they would have something to say on regulating it. But when the British saw it, or at least the British leaders saw it, they said, well, I'm not going to be able to get away with the thing that I'm doing right now because it would be considered criminal under this. So we better let the Queen know, because this is how we make money for her, and so we can't be a participant in this, because we got to be able to have bags of coins sitting on the side and be able to hit anything up that we need to at any time. And that's certainly not possible if all of our assets are documented on a fucking blockchain somewhere. So yeah, that would be a key reason why they want fucking Brexit, is because they can see this regulatory framework being imposed on the rest of Europe by Germany, and they're like, no, we don't want to get taken over by Germany. Only people that don't have any idea about economics ever looked at the European Union as anything but Germany trying to take over Europe for a third time during the 20th century. This time just without bullets and tanks. Anyway, let's go ahead and throw back down into some music. I'm not sure where to go with it, though. Here we go. A little bit of Within the Ruins, New Holy War, here on Coin Metal. And that was Megadeth, Holy Wars, The Punishment Due. And it is with that I'd like to close out this episode. Thank you very much for listening. I certainly do appreciate the support. We will be back again on Wednesday at 8 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. And so until then, I want y'all to trade safe. Do your homework. And watch out for your own bunghole, because nobody else is going to do it for you. Certainly not the EU. And so, as far as our last dance is concerned, I actually have it playing right now. Soundgarden, Jesus Christ Pose, Last Dance, here on Coin Metal. Thank you again for listening, and y'all have an excellent evening. Good night.